Good morning. I would like to thank the organizers for participating in such high level and highly interesting conference with distinguished scholars from various disciplines. I would like to outline briefly why the current system of international environmental governance has to be reformed in order to pursue the goal of environmental justice. First of all, we have to define what do we mean under the term of environmental justice. There are several legal theories for environmental justice. Also here, the distributional issues are central, as are central also in the general theories of justice. But despite various approaches, we can distinguish two important elements of the environmental justice theories. These elements are obvious in the Brundtland definition for sustainable development and in the New Delhi Declaration adopted by ILA for the 7 principles relevant to sustainable development. This is the dimension of the intragenerational justice. This means that it has to be ensured the equal distribution of the natural resources and the burdens among the people of the same generation. And this means that the states have to fulfill their commitment expressed in the Millennium Development Goals to eradicate poverty. But the principle of sustainability gives also guidance in defining intragenerational justice. This means, in particular, that although development for developing countries and the third world is a high priority, unsustainable patterns of development should not be allowed. The second dimension of the concept of environmental justice is that of the intergenerational justice. This means that the present distribution of the environmental resources should not endanger the ability of the future generations to make use of them in order to meet their needs. This requires thus that the present generation makes sustainable use of natural resources and pass on the integrity of the ecosystems as we have inherited them. Then there is another third approach to environmental justice, which is the less accepted. This is the ecological concept of environmental justice, according to which nature must be valued in its own right, and the importance of the human needs must be counterbalanced by the equally important needs of the non-human nature. And then the question arises whether the current system of international environmental governance can promote environmental justice in the dimensions described above, and especially the aspect of intragenerational justice and intergenerational environmental justice. In order to answer this question, we have to have a quick view on how the current system of environmental governance functions. And then we can find a wide variety of reasons that speak for the urgent reform of the current system of the international environmental governance in order not only to pursue effectively environmental justice concept, but also to deal effectively with environmental issues. The reasons for reform are the following: fragmentation in the architecture of international environmental governance, being the result of the proliferation of many multilateral environmental agreements and institutions engaged in the field of environmental protection at the international level, lack of cooperation and coordination among the relevant organizations engaged in this field, lack of implementation, enforcement, and effectiveness of the various provisions of multilateral environmental agreements. There is a lack of enforcement and compliance mechanisms within the system of international environmental governance, insufficient use of resources, and the weak role of the environmental governance institution outside the outside the environmental arena. This means that although several issues related to environmental protection are decided within the concept of trade, investment, and international development regulation, there is no strong presence of environmental governance institutions in this field. All this, therefore, speak for the need to reform the current system of international governance. And the question then now is how? For answering this question, we have to focus on the issue of the centralization. This means, should we establish a centralized body within the EU system to deal with environmental issues, or should we prefer more decentralized and integrated structures? I think that there are several advantages that speak for the centralization, for the establishment of a centralized body within the EU system. And these advantages are the following. It is the concentration of resources, which may increase the ability to establish effective compliance and enforcement mechanisms. Concentration of power, which allows such a body to challenge other powerful organizations with such an example, the WTO. Consolidation of information and increased uniformity of international sustainable development rules and standards. But there are also disadvantages concerning the establishment of a centralized body, and the proponents of more decentralized solutions say that criticized such approaches that they are associated with lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and crystallized power structures within the decision-making processes of such organizations. And one of the issues that has been raised in the international agenda is that centralized bodies has already disfavored, has action in disfavored in terms of achieving north-south equity, because many legal scholars and NGOs believe that the current international environmental agenda reflects the Western priorities and does not reflect the priorities of developing countries and of the third world. There is also a huge knowledge gap, a huge divide between South and North that does not allow developing countries to participate effectively in the negotiation for international agreements and regulations. All these have to be discussed, and there is a wide variety of proposals, especially whether we decide to establish a centralized body within the UN system. These proposals can be classified into three categories. The first category of proposals relates to the upgrading of UNEP to a specialized agency. The second category of proposals relates into establishing an all-encompassing World Environment Organization, which will include all the existing institutions and multilateral environmental agreements into one body. And there is a more radical proposal for establishing a strong intergovernmental organization with majority system and enforcement capacities vis-à-vis states. I think that this option is not possible. But what I want to underline is that in order to pursue the goal of the intragenerational justice, and we have to take into account how to design such an organization. The South-North equity should be a central point in any discussion of reform. And in my opinion, a centralized body could benefit the developing countries in many ways if it is designed properly. This can happen because such a body would be in a better position to launch a new global capacity building and technology transfer initiative to the developing countries, which is very much needed. Such a centralized body can strengthen the science community in the developing countries and also can contribute to the more efficient use of resources. And it is important for the less developing part of the world that in the constitutive treaty for such an organization, the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities will be established as one of its guiding principles. Furthermore, there is a huge discussion of how the concept, the dimension of the intergenerational justice should be taken into consideration within the reform of the UN system. Therefore, there is a proposal for the establishing an environmental trustee council. This was a proposal of the Commission on the Global Governance because at the current stage there is no legal status for the global environment or the common areas such as the ocean and the atmospheres, so that there is no erga omnes status of global environmental responsibility. Furthermore, also the rights of the future generations have to be taken into consideration in the decision-making processes. Therefore, such a trustee council is an option. And finally, we have to discuss how to ensure the effective implementation, the effective enforcement of the multilateral environmental agreements and the regulations. Because now the status is that the people participating in international environmental governance permanently negotiating without focusing how to achieve the objectives set in the agreements and meet all these goals. Therefore, I think it is very important to think parallelly with the establishment of a centralized body for dealing with environmental issues about the establishment of international environmental court so that the international environmental organization could refer cases to that court and enhance the enforcement of the existing legal system. Finally, I would like to underline that any reform of the current system of environmental governance should be guided by a strong sense of ethics. I think we have to see in a new way both our relationship with the nature and the developed countries, our relationship with the less developed parts of the world. Thank you.